Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a wonderful day so far because, well, we have a lot to talk about. And, you know, some interesting, some eye-opening, and some kind of funny, I'll admit. And, but yeah, so today's going to be a great show for you longtime listeners out there. One of our longest running correspondents is here with us today. And, you know, back when we used to do the show 10 to midnight every single day, or I guess every single night, we used to call it open mic night. That was Craig's phrase for today's show. And, well, now it's just Mike Cermak joins us every first Wednesday of the month. So set your calendars. You can set your watch by it. And, yeah, we have a lot to talk about. And, of course, he owns, operates, and, handles techguy.org, which has been and continues to be Computer America's official tech support forum, where if you need help and we can't get you here on the show, don't worry about it. Head on over there. They have a great community where they, of course, help people out. And while you're there, maybe you can help someone out as well. So with that being said, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from links to our guest website to, any articles that we do, any videos that we show, just anything and everything will be right there in one place. And be sure to enter the Logitech contest, give away a prize every single Friday. That's right. You can do that here on the program. And also be sure to check out the live video stream, which is brought to you by OWC. So with all that being said, why don't we go? Oh, and by the way, feel free to join us over in the chat room at twitch.tv/Computer America. So with all that being said, because they like pointing out things I do on video, but why don't we go ahead and bring in our guest? So Mike Cermak, as I said before, owner, operator, techguy.org, and all around interesting man, most interesting man in the world. Mike, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Ben. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. So, all right. Thank you for joining us. And before we get started, let's go ahead and ask, how are you? How's techguy.org? How's life?
Techguy.org is great. I'm doing great, and I'm happy to announce we now have a little girl.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We have 2 boys, and now we finally have our girl.
So are you are you going for, like a whole collection, or, I
feel like I have the whole set now, right? I got the boy and the girl, so I think I'm done for now, but we'll see.
Right.
We feel very fortunate. Everyone's home and healthy, and yeah, it's all good.
That's awesome. Yeah, no. So in case you go for 2 and 2, other than that though, again, thanks for coming on Computer America. Congratulations on the baby. And yeah, why don't we go ahead and get things kicked off here as we can, start to talk about some of the headlines that, and let's start with some of the ones that you sent over. So this is, and people in the chat room said yay to the babies. I'm surprised that mom out there is happy for that. But let's go ahead and start with some of the stories you sent over. And let's get this one out of the way, because if you were listening to yesterday's show, we did mention it. I didn't have much commentary on it because I was trying to do the Rain Man thing, where I was trying to get numbers in my head straight, and I was trying to figure out if the cost was justified for Mercedes-Benz new subscription model. And so let's go ahead and let's outline that. And if you could just, kind of talk about what Mercedes-Benz angle is in offering people a car for $1,100. Why would they do this?
Yeah, right. So it's a subscription model, and I think by and large, we're going to see more and more subscription models around cars. And we can even talk about Tesla a little bit in that. But what Mercedes-Benz is offering is starting at $1,100 a month. It pretty much includes cars as a service. We often talk about software as a service in computers. This is kind of like cars as a service. You download their app and take a picture of your driver's license and pay a $500 activation fee. And then it's lets you go around and use some of their vehicles.
Yeah, and although the feeling I was getting from this when I first read it was, it's not like ride sharing where you just pull open an app and whatever car is nearest to you, you get it. I feel like this was the one where you go to a dealer and they give you a car and they say, okay, $1,100 a month, rent it from us or subscribe to us. And then whenever you don't want it, bring it back and stop paying your monthly subscription fee. And you walk away with no strings attached. Like, that's kind of like, it wasn't like, just pick up anyone else's car. It was, you kind of get a car, but, subscribe to it.
Right. Well, and it says that you can swap out vehicles and communicate with the concierge service anytime through the app, and they deliver the vehicle to you, washed with a full tank of gas whenever you want it. Yeah, I don't know. I think within the tier service that you get, you can choose whatever vehicle you want and swap it out. No mileage limitations, includes insurance, roadside assistance, maintenance, and everything. It's expensive, of course, but it is Mercedes-Benz. But it kind of reminds me of what's the major ride-sharing service? I'm going
Uber,
through my wallet.
Uber, Lyft, ride
Well,
sharing.
I'm not thinking this is more. This isn't really ride-sharing, right? This is where you're still the driver. You're just getting the car. I'm thinking of Zipcar. I had to go through my wallet and find my Zipcar, and Zipcar is a neat service. It's kind of similar, but as you said, the cars are just sitting around waiting for you. So whenever I travel, I can open up their app and say, 2 blocks down the road, there's a Zipcar I can borrow and drive off wherever I want, and I'm charged by the half hour or whatever increment to rent it and then take it back and put it back where I found it. So I think that we'll see much more of that, and I think Mercedes is starting to get into it, and I think other car manufacturers will as well, because it makes a lot of sense, especially for people who live in major cities where you don't really need a car all the time. It makes a lot of sense to have that flexibility to be able to do it when you want. Now, the Mercedes thing is kind of different. I think it's more of the the high-end people who just want the flexibility to switch cars around, and so I don't know. It certainly doesn't make financial sense, I wouldn't think, in their case, but I don't know. Who am I to judge, right?
Right.
But the Tesla Model 3 kind of is going down that road as well. We talked about this a little bit before. The Tesla network is what they've called it, but haven't really released much information about it yet. And the idea in that is that while you're at work or wherever, your Tesla can be driving around and doing ride sharing for you, driving people around wherever they want, and you make some money on your car while you're not using it.
Right. And I think that Mercedes has said that they're looking into the same kind of deal and not really for some reason, but for obvious reasons. All of the major car manufacturers, everything from Ford, GM, all the American ones, all the European ones, not just the idea of ride sharing, not just the idea of, kind of renting or pseudo leasing a car, but fleet management and subscribers. That seems to be what all the car companies are realizing, that at least for major cities, the place where you do have access to a lot of cars, that is going to be how people will own cars, because it's cheaper and all that kind of thing.
They're not going to own cars. They're going to use them when they need them. You're exactly right. And then that, you don't have to worry about all the overhead of it, all the insurance. Where the heck are you going to park it in the city? You don't have to worry about any of that nonsense. You decide you need a car, you hit a button on an app, and someone picks you up, or an autonomous car comes and drives over to you, or you walk a block over to the parking garage. I mean, that's really the writing on the wall. So the car manufacturers are obviously starting to figure that out, and they don't want to have a middleman there. They want to get that retail pricing directly to them. And Tesla went so far as in the Model 3, there's actually a camera that faces the cabin. There's an inside cabin camera that's currently not used for anything, and they haven't announced anything officially about it, but the expectation is that will be used whenever your car is being used for ride sharing. So you can kind of keep an eye on your 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 people who are borrowing your car.
Yeah, and so I mean, I feel like what Mercedes-Benz is doing here, it's going to be niche. It's only going to be available in a few markets. The $1,100 a month price tag, pretty darn hefty. And then of course that's for the cheap ones, a cheap Mercedes-Benz. And then you go like a step up, and it's like $1,600 or $1,500 for the next step up sedans. So, and as I said before, they had they also had BMW, Volvo, Porsche, and a couple other car manufacturers all doing the same thing. I feel like this is the precursor to what we just mentioned. This is the precursor to the idea of, not owning a car, but paying these manufacturers somewhere down the line, and you get to use their cars. This is the middleman. So,
yep,
I thought it was interesting.
I think it's a precursor of things to come. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this, and it's going to be interesting 10 years from now to look back at how people looked at cars. And I think it'll be more the exception than the rule that people will actually own cars.
Right. No, that's and hey, that is kind of okay with me. I'm not one of those people that's like, if I don't own it, it's kind of like the idea of streaming music versus buying it on iTunes. It's like, if I don't own it, then they could take it away at any time. Like, I've never been of that mentality, so I don't feel that would apply to cars, at least for me, where it's like, if I don't own a car, they could take my car away at any time. It's like, no, I just don't have to worry about changing the oil on it. It's great. It's a great freedom. So, all right. So there's that story. Again, talked a bit more about it in a bit more detail about the plans last segment. But all right. So there's that one. Now, this next story, you mentioned it, and I am now paranoid because we recently installed Netgear Orbi. And Orbi is a mesh networking service. They come with, by default, one base, one satellite, and you can set them up throughout a home. And I've been finding great use out of it. It's been a lot of fun, not having to switch from, because, obviously massive house. No. It's just, there's concrete walls, and we put them on two opposite sides of the house, and you're going to get low connectivity on one, and you're going to get good connectivity on the other at all times. And it's been nice not having to, actively juggle multiple Wi-Fi connections. So Wi-Fi network, mesh Wi-Fi has a lot of uses. I'm personally seeing the benefits of the technology. But then you come out with this article saying that it could be used to, spy on me, detect if I'm sleeping. What is this? Why is this? And why did you do this to me?
It's like Santa, right? Knows if you're sleeping or knows if you're awake.
Yeah, the NSA, right.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting article here, and the video is even more interesting because they actually demonstrate it a little bit. But the idea on it is that these mesh networks, just as you said, have multiple devices in your home or office that communicate with one another. And initially the idea is so that they can then offer better Wi-Fi throughout the building without having to actually run wires, which of course is the best way to do it, but isn't always practical. So these things, though, analyze the signal so that they don't interfere with one another, and can now analyze it to the point where they can kind of detect if things are changing. So if there's something that is disrupting the signal from one to the other, it can detect that. And they're using this software to really try to dig that down to the point where they can detect if there's people there and how quickly they're breathing, their rate of breathing, and also can detect if they fall over to give you a fall warning.
Wow.
And can be used as a security system, right? So if your house is empty and then all of a sudden there's someone in your house, it knows it. So you could effectively use it as a security system without it even having to be in line of sight, because it's radio waves. So even if you have one of these in one room and one of these in 5 rooms over, it can sense a difference in the rooms in between. It's really remarkable, and I'm a little skeptical that it's going to work as well as they claim, but I'm interested to see.
I mean, obviously I went to the privacy invasion kind of thing because, let's see, there's another technology we talked about maybe like 2 years ago and haven't heard much since, and that has to do with putting a camera at a pane of glass, like a window, and you could measure the vibrations, and you could essentially tell what people were saying based on the very, 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 very tiny vibrations in glass. And it doesn't seem similar, but at the same time, it's not. It's just another way to detect what people are doing, what people are saying, without actually having to, be inside of a room with someone. And of course, I just went straight to privacy, but I guess they're saying that this could be used to, act as a kind of a caregiver or an alarm system. I mean, this though, of course, this would benefit from, only be possible if everyone does mesh networking, or if you have a mesh network in the home. I don't think that this would be possible if you only had one source of Wi-Fi, like if you only had one source. So do you think that just the everyday person, how quickly do you think adoption of mesh Wi-Fi, let's say one bedroom apartments or smaller houses or small offices, do you think there's any point in having a mesh Wi-Fi? And do you think maybe it would kind of help if they said, well, for $10 a month and mesh Wi-Fi, we can be your security service?
Yeah, I don't know. And I have concerns about just how reliable it will be, especially at first. It's such a new technology, and it seems to me there's so many variables in it, especially in the case of something like an apartment, where it's going to potentially detect movement or changes in other nearby rooms that will affect that signal. So I think there's a lot of questions yet to be answered with it. The company that has made this product says that for right now, they're focusing on selling them only for B2B, the idea being to use it in assisted living homes and things like that, where it can help detect falls or issues. And then, sometime in the next couple of years, perhaps release it to the public for consumer level. And I don't know. I think that'll be a tough sell. I do. I think I'd have to see some really outstanding demos before I could really imagine a lot of people running out to get it. And how useful will it be? I mean, really, it can tell you that something has changed. Perhaps there's someone in the house now, but you still really need the cameras and other systems to really make that useful.
I guess I have babies on the brain now, because I was thinking that Netgear also makes a line of baby monitors. They're mainly cameras, and they do infrared for, night vision kind of deal. But I was just thinking that maybe cribs of the future will have little antennas on all four corners, and it would just beam, radio signals at your baby and just let you know, what they're doing at all times. Just
how did I not think to bring this up? This is perfect, Ben. So I have a new baby, and she was born 3 weeks early, by the way. And my wife and I as well have concerns about issues with SIDS and scary things like that.
Of course.
And so she sent me to this website, and I just sent you the link, called Owlet. OWLET. This should have been on my list of suggested things to talk about, but I didn't think of it. And it's a remarkable little device that attaches to her foot. It's a little sock that you put on her foot at night when she's sleeping, and it monitors her heart rate and her oxygen level. And then it notifies a little base. It works through Bluetooth to this little base, and then the base can beep and sound alarms if there's a problem, and can also then send a signal through Wi-Fi to an app on your phone. So literally, as I sit here at work, I can look at an app on my phone, and if the sock is on her, I can see her heart rate and her oxygen level. And if there were a problem, it would ring my phone and the base and Heather's phone. And it's such a cool thing. It's a little bit off topic from the mesh network way that it works, because it's very direct reading, but it goes right along with what you're talking about, that we want to see that sort of stuff. We want to monitor things. And I made the comment to a friend of mine saying, I think that this is the future. I think that in the not distant future, all newborns will come home from the hospital with a device like this, attached to their foot to warn you of problems like that. I mean, right now it's kind of expensive. It's like $250 or $300 for it, which really isn't all that expensive when you consider what it does and how much you pay for newborn stuff to begin with.
Right.
But you can imagine in the future, in a couple of years, it's going to be terribly inexpensive. I really think we're going to be seeing a lot more technology like that.
Right, and as you said, this is your third, and I'm assuming this is maybe the first one that you've purchased to for your new baby, and maybe by the time you had your first, something like this wasn't even available in the market. Something like this
I don't
wasn't
think
even,
it was.
Right. So, and now we do have it. I think it's pretty exciting when we're talking about IoTing our babies. That is a great use of this technology. And very cool. I'm actually going to bookmark this. I want to see if they want to come on the show and talk about.
You totally should.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it is a wonderful piece of technology. It, just like everything, it's not perfect, but it sure helps us sleep at night a lot better.
Right. And I guess it doesn't. And I guess the baby doesn't fuss too much. It's just a sock.
She doesn't care a bit. Yeah, and that's especially newborns. They couldn't care less about what you do with them. But no, it doesn't bother her a bit, and it's smart to put it on the foot because she can't reach it or bother with it or whatever. And it's just wonderful.
And then here, as they grow, they have a second version that's a shoe and has a touchpad on the bottom, like a Dick Tracy, whatever. But no,
as they get older, you need one with a GPS in it so you can track their every move. And it becomes microphone so you can listen in on them. And
it becomes a collar, and then a harness, and then just a full body straitjacket.
You need a button so you can shock them whenever they
safety. Safety, exactly. We like it. All right, so there's that Wi-Fi router, and I mean that's just kind of the thing where, let's see, I think it's the 5 gigahertz, the 5 gigahertz or the 5G Wi-Fi signals that they're starting to come out with. They have those, and then I think they're also starting to experiment with the AX standard of Wi-Fi, where that's like super short range. Like if you are within, like, I want to say about 10 feet of your Wi-Fi router, they're testing, I want to say it's like the 28 gigahertz or one of the, much, much higher bandwidth ones. And it can transmit a lot more data, much faster, but the signal's going to degrade much faster the further away you are from it. So maybe that kind of technology, if you want, this article that you pointed out here, tests every 30 times every second. So maybe if you have something on a much faster frequency and you can test, instead of 30 times, you can test 300 times or 3,000 times a second, that's going to give you like hospital grade care and monitoring. So
sure. Well, I mean, in their defense, 30 times a second is probably more than enough for most. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't get. And this reminds me very much. We had a story a couple of months ago. I don't know if you remember, of buttons, Wi-Fi buttons and so on that could trigger things, where you had
just some switches, right?
Yeah, right. When they were hardly even switches, they were just plastic and something that would interfere with the wireless signal so that the Wi-Fi router could detect it.
Right.
And this stuff just seems like we're on the very cusp of what is possible here. And I'll be interested just to see how it develops going forward.
Absolutely. So with that being said, let's switch over to I think we get one more story in here, and if you don't mind, let's go ahead and switch over to some of the ones I sent you. And I'm kind of excited about this because yesterday, really one of the leading news stories was Intel coming out with their 28 core processor. 28 core, 56 thread, and then I don't know if AMD has like an inside plant into what Intel is doing.
Of course they do.
But AMD said,
and vice versa. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, no, and then of course AMD said, well, here's the thing, folks. The day after, 32 cores, 64 thread, enthusiast chip. And I really don't think this is even enthusiast anymore. This is bananas, kind of technology. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at this, but let me just explain, maybe while you read over the article. But yesterday when we talked about the Intel chip, it was, the situation with that was 28 core, 56 hyper-threaded threads, I guess, and it could reach a maximum of 5 gigahertz. And some people were kind of knocking it because the 5 gigahertz number, it was using, and Mike, I personally have never heard of this kind of cooling technology, but they called it a phase-changing cooling system, phase change. And it sustained it for about 5 seconds before the heat was just too much. So to claim
totally counts,
right? But I think to a lot of people in a real world situation, I don't think 5 gigahertz is feasible by any means, possible. So
and when you have 28 cores, does it matter?
Right. Yeah. So 28 cores, and but they did say kind of capped out at 5 gigahertz. So not the fastest we've seen. We've seen much less cores and much less threads do much faster speeds, but it's still pretty cool. The idea of running 28 different applications, or at least some number of applications on a single processor, that appealed to, I guess, a very niche kind of population. So anyways, 32 cores now from AMD Ryzen. What do you think about this?
It seems like overkill, right? I mean, it's just exactly as you said. They're just trying to, oh, I see your 28 cores and I raise you another 4. But it's over the top. It's certainly for enthusiasts only. I mean, there's no legitimate reason to do that, I can imagine. It's just to be the first on the block with a 32-core processor.
To me, it's even beyond that. There are enthusiasts, and they want the fastest processor, and there's always been this kind of balance. And maybe it's because Intel has been in charge for so long, but Intel always tried to balance the number of threads, and for the longest time until Threadripper hit the market, Intel capped out at 8 cores, 16 threads. Like that was their i7, and the 8-core model was all you had. And then you could get into the Xeon processors, which were server based, and you could go up to, I think, like 20 cores. Anyways, and then the speeds were always, kind of up there. But that seems to be, kind of getting thrown out the window. I think the speeds are probably going to be closer to high 3s, low 4s with, good cooling, and that many threads and that many cores. But I'm trying to think of what enthusiast, because a gaming enthusiast, and that's usually what I think about when I think enthusiast, a gaming enthusiast would never need 32 cores.
Well, that's easy to say now, right? Isn't it?
Right now, I guess. Yeah, that's true.
It's subject to change, and it especially depends on what all you're doing with your gaming PC. If you're streaming it out and recording it and running a couple games, now even then, I can't imagine what you do with it. I mean, if you're rendering video, rendering 3D graphics, I mean, perhaps you could get use out of all of those. It's hard for me to imagine other cases where you could actually use that many cores.
The only thing I can think of is if we have a major shift in how software is developed, or software is rendered and actually uses the processor, because so much of video games and a lot of processes on the consumer machine, a lot of that has been offloaded to the graphics card. The processor is just kind of minding everything and keeping everything in place. Maybe, in the not too distant future, if we have access to 32 core, processors, maybe we have some kind of software change where, a program doesn't just take 4 cores at most. It will say, all right, give me 20 cores and I'll run that much better. But we're not there yet. Maybe it's a cart before the horse, and this is just the cart, and now we need the horse. I don't know.
Well, and of course, software developers aren't going to be able to take advantage of that many cores until the hardware developers create it. So you do need to have a cart before the horse a little bit. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but it would be hard to imagine a desktop PC with 8 cores, if we had talked about this when I first started on this show.
Yeah. Yeah, and RAM was exceedingly slow as well. But no, we've come a long way. Let's see. They said both have a base frequency of 3 gigahertz and a turbo of 3.4. All right, so and that's at the very end of this article about the Ryzen chip. And by both, they said the AMD samples. So 32 cores, runs at 3 gigahertz with the 24 one running at 3 gigahertz as well. So I was kind of right. Although I kind of gave it too much credit. I said high 3, low 4s. It's actually low 3s, mid 3s in terms of speed. So the speed's not, again, the speed isn't the best we've ever seen. But, I mean, when it comes to threads and cores, 32 cores, 64 threads, I don't see anything like... I see servers being really, really happy. I see people who manage servers being super happy, but I don't know.
People who render videos will enjoy that.
Yeah, I guess. And then, $3,000 later for the privilege. They haven't set pricing, but I'm betting about $3,000.
Of course. I mean, the latest, greatest technology is always going to be like that until next year when the 34 cores come out.
Man, it's... let's hope not. But all right, so because I already feel inferior about my i7, and now these are coming out, and it's like, am I really a man though? Am I really a man? So anyways, we have music playing in the background, Mike. So everyone out there, we'll be right back. More Computer America as we come back. And I think I want to talk about this U.S. government and ICANN. So everyone stay put. More Computer America right after this.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here, and we're talking with Mike Cermak, and hey, we're having fun just, reading over some of the headlines, talking about what's new in technology, what is the latest and greatest, and hey, what's different. And by the way, Mike, because and I was just flipping through my phone over the break because that's what I do. I'm responsible. I will say that I actually downloaded a new app, and I'm still in the middle of kind of testing it. But I'm kind of excited for if this thing actually works. It's a sleeping app. I'm not sure if you ever use one of those.
I've used a couple different ones. I've used mostly hardware, like a watch that you would wear that would monitor it. And I've seen some where you run an app and then you have to actually place it on your bed. But it always kind of worried me. I mean, to have you know what I mean? I don't really, I have my phone so close to me all day long, I didn't want to sleep on top of it as well.
This one is you download it, you set it on your nightstand face down so the screen never wakes you up with any kind of light, and it uses the microphone in the phone to measure noise levels. So I guess it can pick up if you're tossing or you're turning, if you're snoring, things like that.
But how does it know it's me who's tossing and turning?
Right there is that magical word. It's the same thing that made that the mesh Wi-Fi router monitoring system, machine learning, AI, that kind of thing. An algorithm.
This is my skeptical face.
Yeah, I know. And we can hear it clearly, but it's and I am skeptical. I wanted to try it because I'm having trouble waking up. For some reason, my alarm goes off as usual, and I just feel so groggy. It's terrible. So, anyways, and I'm not out there watching the video portion. I'm gonna hold up my phone so you can see it. But essentially, it's a graph, and that graph right there indicates, think of kind of like the stock market lately. It goes way up, way down, way up, way down. And those are noise levels in my room. So The big spikes, though, I have to admit, I kind of think those are my dogs coming in and out of my room. I don't think I'm making that much noise when when I'm actually sleeping, but it does tell me if I'm getting bad sleep. It does tell me if I'm snoring and how many minutes I'm snoring. It tells me, I'm surprised at the amount of information it's able to pick up simply through the microphone and kind of comparing that to, what normal sleep sounds like. So I'm still testing it, just tried it out this time, and I overslept by about 8 hours. So, it's
by
more
8
testing.
hours?
Let's see. I was supposed to wake up at about 9. Don't get on my case, but 9, and I woke up at about 2. So,
oh my goodness. Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
I guess the alarm didn't really go off too well. But anyways, more testing is needed, of course. So with that, that was my app. I'm kind of getting more interested in sleeping apps either way. So let's go ahead and
app I had back in the day, real quick, that would monitor your sleep. I think it used like a bracelet on you or a watch or something,
right,
which I think would be a more direct measurement. But the thing I liked the most about it measured your sleep and gave you feedback and all that. But the thing I liked most about it, just back to your grogginess and so on when you wake up, is that it would choose to sound your alarm when it thought you were not in a deep sleep.
Same here.
And yeah, and I don't know how accurate that is, but it seemed like it worked, and I was really disappointed when that software was no longer developed. I don't even remember what it was called now, but I really liked that function. You could give it a range and say, "Wake me up within half an hour of this particular time," based on where my how deep of a sleep I'm in.
Right, and that's what this app claims to do. And you could set it between 15 minutes up to an hour and a half. And I kind of chose the hour and a half because, I'm an expert on sleep because I read a Wikipedia article, and sleep cycles take about 90 minutes to get in and out of. Like a complete sleep cycle is 90 minutes. So I decided to give it 90 minutes to wake me up whenever it felt was best. And I woke up an hour early and I said, I still have another hour to sleep, and I went back to bed. So, again, need some work. And we've seen a lot of different hardware solutions. I actually remember the first time the idea of kind of testing your sleep habits. I believe I saw one out at CES, and love the company. I think we had them on the show a couple times. Very nice people, but they wanted you to strap a band around your chest. And and then that would connect to a sensor in your bed that would kind of test your weight and how you're sleeping, and then all of that together would give you kind of the outcome that just simple apps are doing nowadays. So sleep technology is getting there as well, on top of babies and mesh Wi-Fi and things like that. So
well, and soon your Wi-Fi will be able to detect how well you're sleeping, and you won't have to worry about using the phone.
There you go. No, hey, and if everyone gets better sleep for it, why is that a bad thing? So, okay, let's see. Let's go ahead and move over to this one. So this is only, as far as I can tell, maybe an idea that our government is thinking about, but the implications, I mean, let's see, have we had ICANN? I don't think we had ICANN specifically on the show, but we have had many regulatory commissions on the show that, are multinational, multi-company. No one service, government, or project really has that much sway over the entirety of a standard. And that's how I kind of felt about ICANN, where if you wanted to purchase a domain, if you want to purchase, or if you wanted to use an IP address, it was all handled by an international consortium of experts and network smarties that essentially said, here we are the official repository, and don't worry, we are independent of everyone because we are everyone. And now this article from the Register, and I believe hopefully you've kind of looked over it as well, but taking that away from the ICANN, and which is again a service or a regulatory body that services the world really, and handing that over to a singular government just seems like a huge step backwards as far as the ideas of the internet.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because a lot of people who I talk to who don't really understand how the internet works, they think that, the internet is this big free thing and that there's no one that oversees it, which is, not exactly true. ICANN is who oversees it. They're a nonprofit group. It was created like 20 years ago, and otherwise, and you need that. You need someone to oversee it because otherwise, Ben could decide, well, I'm going to be
I'm starting the
Google.com
internet.
today.
Yeah, I'm starting the
I am
internet.
Google.
Right.
And you can't do that. You can't have people just decide they're gonna. So you need someone to oversee it and assign. Okay, you can be Google.com. Okay, you can have this IP address. Okay, these are the rules that you're going to play by for them, and you just need someone to do that. And the thing ICANN has been pretty good about is creating these rules and making them fair. I think with few people would question that across the board. And so you're right. So it's interesting. They were given the I don't want to say the license or the authority to do this by the government, and certainly the government can take it back if they so choose. I'm just not quite sure why they would so choose, and I think that would certainly create a lot of controversy to have that not be a third party. I mean, it was only very recently, within the last couple of years, I think, that they completely got rid of all government oversight, that they are completely a separate organization now. So it does seem like you're going backwards a little bit to get rid of that. And I don't know of any good reason to do that. The biggest controversy recently with ICANN that I think that article even mentioned is the whole GDPR issues. And I'm sure you've talked about GDPR on the show before, the global data protection that has gone into effect for EU citizens and is why my mailbox is full of policy changes, privacy policy changes from every company I've ever talked to in my entire life. And ICANN has a rule that people who register domains have to provide them with certain information, including the name and email address and phone number of the people registering and the technical contact and their billing contact and all of that. And that it has to go into a WHOIS database, central database. And some of that is against the new GDPR rules about privacy. And so there's been a big fight. There's been court cases over that, and I think some of that may have sparked the interest in the government of bringing it back. But I don't see the advantage of it.
Right. It's an interesting move. And by the way, let's see, IANA, that was kind of the American arm of ICANN, and they handed that over back in 2016, according to this article. And so I guess they could take that part of it back if they wanted to, but essentially they wanted ICANN to be much more kind of self-directing, and didn't want to have to wait for policymakers in the U.S. to affect change on kind of a global scale as far as the internet goes. Again, this is all kind of if they do, what would happen, and I like to think that if anything were to be backtracked, it would simply be kind of, I hate to say this, but kind of just an American problem, and the rest of everyone else would kind of say, all right, we're going to keep the internet as it kind of routes today. We're going to keep everything, IP addresses, domains, everything going the way it is. And then if Americans want to be on the world internet, they have to stay compliant with us. And that's kind of what I'm hoping really falls out of this, if it even happens.
And that really becomes a mess then, right? If you can't have multiple internets, you have to have an organization that oversees the internet. Otherwise, it's just going to be all kinds of compatibility issues.
Right. So, all right. So there's that one, and just want to touch on that one lightly because I thought it was an interesting what-if scenario. So, all right, there's that one.
I don't think much is going to come of that. That's really an interesting thing to speculate and to think about and hope that it should never happen. But I don't think we're going to see much come of that.
I hope you're right. That's as far as I think I can take it here on Computer America until I start up Political America, which we will never do. But yeah, I hope not. So, all right, there's that one. And I also wanted to touch on this one kind of briefly because being a technology show, we reported on this when it first happened with, I want to say, I think it was Volkswagen. May have been the first company that was kind of caught doing this. And I said back then, and I'm not sure if you remember, Mike, about, well, everything has to have a gate at the end of it, but Dieselgate. It was it was the idea that these companies were, or at least Volkswagen at the start, were cheating emission standards testing, where essentially the computer in the car would know if it was being tested. It knew if port so-and-so was being accessed, and if that's the case, then spit out false details. So that was happening, and it was ubiquitous. And I said when it first happened, this isn't just Volkswagen. This isn't just one rogue engineer in the bowels of the research and development department of Volkswagen. This is all the way up to the CEO, which he resigned. And beyond that, this is an industry-wide problem. So there's this new article out today, and they call it the impossible to cheat emissions test, which I assume they take an intern, shove his mouth on the exhaust pipe, and see how long he lives. That is the only way I can see them actually.
I'm not sure if your testing methodology is the best method to.
It's brilliant. I don't know what you're talking about. But so many interns later, they have determined that almost all new diesels are still dirty. And again, if I was a more go-getting kind of journalist, I would have kind of chased that down. But I will say that I'm not surprised at all. When one company as big as Volkswagen, and they were fined billions of dollars for this, and it affected the recall, like really the largest recall of diesel we've ever seen, and it turns out that 88%, 88% of diesel vehicles still cause damage to individuals because they don't meet the new emission standards. So that's really the only thing I want to mention, was that it's not just Volkswagen. Really, it's Fiat Chrysler. It's a lot of other companies don't meet the standard.
And to your point earlier, it's not as though this is an accidental thing. It's not like there's a rogue engineer within each of these companies who is doing this. It takes a lot of programming and a lot of oversight and a lot of people having to pretend to look the other way for that type of code to go in there. I mean, it is malicious code. It's not that there's an accidental thing. It was a very malicious, intentional thing to say, if to determine these algorithms, is it currently being tested? If so, reduce the capability of the engine so that the emissions look like they're going to pass the test. And it's just, it's crazy what they thought they could get away with, and they did for quite a while.
And they continue to as well. I mean, this is even going on today. And the reason that let's see, if I wanted to bring this around into a nice, neat little loop for us, is because we here on the show do talk a lot about electric vehicles. Not just Tesla, but many other electric vehicles. And there's always a conversation to be had about the true efficiency of an electric vehicle when it comes to pollution versus, let's say, a diesel engine. And if you don't have the proper numbers, to have that conversation, then especially if you're making them look much more favorable for diesel, then you really don't have, I guess, the public's best interest at heart when you say, oh, electric cars are cleaner, but they're only 4 times cleaner than diesel. When in reality, they're, they might be 40 times cleaner than diesel engines. So it's important, and the numbers are, finally getting back out there. But again, it just kind of shows that when it comes to actually tracking these numbers, technology is advancing, and I'm sure I could look up the true. You're right; it's not killing interns. It's probably more some kind of test that they do in a very sterile lab, but. Yeah.
But they know to do it now. And part of the problem is that it never occurred to someone that these companies would dare be so bold as to do something like this. And it's kind of surprising the way it was found out. It was some university that was doing testing on vehicle emissions. They weren't looking for this problem specifically. No one knew this was happening, which in and of itself is kind of surprising to me, that there wasn't a whistleblower or there wasn't someone from inside who was thinking, this is really a bad thing that we're doing here, and I need to tell the news media. It wasn't any of that. It was just a university project that accidentally discovered this.
Right. No, it was an outside source, and they went through, and it would cause huge shakeup, huge problems for Volkswagen and many other companies. And they have a quote here saying that, if I was a customer, I would look at these figures at the moment and have to conclude I should not buy a diesel car. That is the heart of it, where emission standards in the U.S., around the world, they're going up. If they don't meet a certain level, they're not going to be road legal in 10 years. So especially diesel vehicles, if you're not going to be able to even drive it in 15, 20 years, why would you purchase it today? Kind of thing.
Well, and it just makes people less trustworthy of them as well. If you're going to go out and buy a new car, it's going to cross your mind now. You're going to say, boy, I don't know. They're telling me that it passes the requirements, but is this going to be another one that's going to get recalled?
Right. So, hey, we'll see what comes out of that. But again, it was a thing that this happened with Volkswagen, and I know a couple of Chinese manufacturing companies that were making diesel vehicles, and those were the same way. They were doing bad testing, like it wasn't software cheating like Volkswagen was doing, but they were doing improper testing methodology to get bad numbers as well. So there's a lot of ways around it, and I just don't see a lot of diesel vehicles actually meeting true standards. So there's that one. All right. Let's see, 10 minutes left, and let me pick one more, and then you can pick another. Let's do the flight sim labs, because I've been hearing a lot about this, and at the same time, I haven't talked about it on the show. So a lot of, and I know a lot of Compute America users who enjoy flight simulators. This could be just for fun. I've seen people really get into the hobby. They build a cockpit in their house, and they have giant monitors to act as windows, and you can get pretty in depth with the idea of a flight simulator. But at the end of the day, they are just, essentially glorified games, and the permissions that they kind of need are should be pretty basic, to install a game. Well, this coming out of Tech Dirt, and I believe Ars Technica reported on it yesterday, and a couple others before that. But Flight Sim Labs, it's a game, I believe, available through Steam. They have a problem, and they were questioned on it by a couple of Reddit users, saying that Flight Sim Labs made it onto our page after Reddit users noticed that every installation of the software, including a legitimate purchase, installed a file called test.exe. Ooh, mysterious. Which was not just a form of DRM, but which also serves as a Chrome password dumping tool, extracting usernames and passwords from people in web browsers. And whatever the fuzzy line between DRM software and malware, the installation of the text.exe file clearly leapt over that line with a flourish. So essentially, you download this game, and it installed a piece of software that would extract all of your usernames and passwords from your Chrome browser. Kind of weird, right?
No, I don't think weird is the right word for that.
What word would you pin to it?
That sounds more like a virus to me, or perhaps a Trojan horse than anything else.
Okay. And let's see, if you don't have any technical background at all, again, continuing with the article, they attempted to deliver DRM onto users' machines, but named the files to mimic a common Windows background file that users see all the time. So they said, if you open up the task manager, you would see cmd host.exe, so command host, it's, no big deal. And they said, in other words, it's the kind of thing that everyone would scroll past, assuming it's legitimate. So they tried to hide their DRM by naming it common processes.
Yeah, which is basically what malware usually does.
Right, absolutely.
And that's what pulled up the flags here. People thought it was doing something, especially considering their history of doing bad things.
And I believe this manufacturer also, or at least this game developer, had another problem as well. But just to be clear here, the reason that this really blew up, because Flight Sim Labs, I'm sure it's a great game, and maybe, I don't know, but let's face it, it would have its niche audience, and the niche audience may have never noticed, and it maybe would have just kind of gone away. But here's the thing. They sent an email to a Reddit user claiming that for them pointing out how they actually do their DRM, I believe they said that they wanted to take legal action against them for exposing their, essentially how they do things. And they were going to sue the crap out of them. Yeah, that doesn't work. And usually when you level a lawsuit against someone, they will be quick to post it on the internet. And of course, that's what went viral. And that's what we kind of picked up on, was the letter claimed and also suggests that critics of Flight Sim Labs may have been subject to Reddit vote manipulation and coordination and discredit them. Essentially, they're going to sue them for what they did. Kind of silly. And that's all I wanted to kind of bring up.
And if we can just have a quick, PR 101 class here for those listening. If you run a company of any kind and you have bad, press for some reason, the proper response isn't, I'm going to sue you. The proper response is, let us come out here and clear things up and explain to you our position. Yeah, because it does not look good when you go say, if you continue to spread this information, we're going to sue you for libel. That's not the right approach. That doesn't win you any points.
I think so, and that is very good words of advice. Although, if you do want to go viral, knowing that a couple of your users, seem to think that you're using, subtle, poor business practices, then please go ahead, sue them, and see how that turns out for you. Never will. All right. So we have a couple more articles. We can touch on one more real quick, Mike. Any of these catch your eye that we haven't touched on?
Well, let's just talk about Microsoft's data center real quick.
Sure, go for it.
So data centers, of course, is where the internet really lives. The whole joke is that, you're putting your things in the cloud, but there is no cloud. It's just somebody else's computer. And in many cases, that somebody else's computer is Amazon's or Microsoft's or Google's. And in this case, we're talking about Microsoft's data centers. They're trying something new. Data centers, of course, are just tons of computers in one small room, and they're infamous for using a lot of electricity and generating a heck of a lot of heat. And so they deal with trying to cool all of those computers in a small, compact room. And Microsoft's solution here is to build a data center underwater so that the ocean it's liquid cooling, right, Ben?
Yeah.
You just throw your data center under the ocean, liquid cool it, you're up and running. Problem solved.
And I guess the only, mark against them that people kind of say, why would you do this? Well, that involves everything from maintenance, because could you imagine one burnt board out there, and you have to say, all right, we got to pull this whole thing up and we got to go do this, but at the same time,
we need you to replace that hard drive. Here, grab the scuba suit.
Yeah, no, thank you. But no, and I think it's a pretty cool idea. I don't think that it's gonna, when you think of the grand scheme of things, will one server underwater warm up the entire ocean, or even the local, kind of flora and fauna? I don't think it will at all. I mean, I don't think it'll have that much an effect, but it's kind of cool. And, the amount of tech that goes in underwater, I mean, think of the giant cables that carry the internet, from Europe to America, the undersea cables. When you think about those, it's pretty cool. The amount of tech relies on the ocean to some extent. So...
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I think you're right. Obviously, one of these data centers with 864 servers in it is not going to make that big of a difference to the temperature of the water. But you'd have to draw the line somewhere, right? I mean, if you start building enough of these, and I think a lot of this is just it's a prototype. I don't think that it's probably cost effective to do this, but I don't know, because it costs a lot of money to cool that many computers. So it's hard to say.
Maybe. And they said that all the power going to it, that's going to power the server, comes from local renewable energy resources generated onshore. So I'm not sure if that means solar or wind or something like that. But, if it's cooled using ocean water and it's powered using renewable energy, it could be pretty self-sustaining as long as the hardware holds up. So pretty darn cool. All right, so with that being said, we have music in the background. And Mike, hey, this hour flew on by. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for coming on. If people want to find out more about techguy.org and what what they have to offer, where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to techguy.org or go to Computer America and click on the Tech Support forums. And if you go there, the website's completely free. You can post your computer questions. You can help answer questions of other people. It's all volunteer-based and paid for by advertisers.
All right, very well said. And everyone, please head on over there if you have any problems. I know that we get a lot of emails asking us, "Hey, something happened. What do we do?" Blue screen of death, and we try our best, but we do not have the some knowledge of Mike's users. So, everyone else out there, thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. And once again, Mike, congratulations on the baby girl. That's very, very cool. And looking forward to having you back on next month. So everyone else out there, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, tune in. And let's see, I think real quick, I can tell you who's coming on the show tomorrow. A company called Circadence, and we're going to be talking about, let's see, looks like cybersecurity. Hey, fun. All right, so cybersecurity, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Until next time, have a great day.